Last Tuesday, on May 24th of 2022, a gunman walked into Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, and opened fire. The motive for this incident is still unknown, with little bits of information being revealed here and there, as the gunman ended their own life after this. But there's no reason that anyone should have gone into an elementary school and taken lives.
An elementary school. What happened is senseless.
Yeah.
It's cruel. Every parent, including myself and Courtney's, worst possible nightmare. And something has to change.
Yeah.
So far this year alone, we've had 214 mass shootings. At the time of recording, May 30th, there would have been only 147 days in 2022.
That's just unbelievable. Like, I don't want to get too deep into it. I don't want to go too far off the rails, because the whole point of what we're doing right now is we're just trying to remember the victims of this horribly traumatic thing that happened. But something needs to change. You know, there's no reason why parents should be deeply afraid to send their kids to school. You know, something's got to give.
Absolutely. It's terrifying.
It is. So, but yeah, there's 21 victims total of this devastating event, 19 of which were children, just children, and 2 were teachers. So before we open up part 4 of this series, we want to invite everyone to remember all of them with us.
Nevaeh Alyssa Bravo, who was 10 years old.
Jacqueline Cazares, who was age 9.
McKenna Lee Elrod, who was 10.
Jose Manuel Flores Jr., who was also 10.
Eliana Garcia, who was 10 as well.
Irma Garcia, who was 48.
Ucia Garcia, who was 10.
Amory Garcia, who was 10 years old.
Xavier Lopez, who was 10.
Jace Carmelo Luvanos, who was 10.
Tess Mata, who was 10.
Miranda Mathis, who was 11.
Eva Morales, who was 44.
Alethea Ramirez, who was 10.
Annabelle Rodriguez, who was 10.
Maite Rodriguez, who was also 10.
Alexandria Lexi Rubio, who was 10.
Layla Salazar, who was 11.
Jayla Nicole Salguero, who was 10.
Eliahana Cruz Torres, who was 10.
Rogelio Torres, who was 10.
So these victims and their families, they're definitely in our hearts. We don't have any words, no words that can undo the series of events that took place or make any of this less heartbreaking. But, our hearts are with those who have lost their loved ones in this seriously tragic event. No parent or family member should ever have to fear for their family's lives every single day they go into a classroom. Nobody should have to live in fear.
No, you shouldn't. A school should be a safe place. That should be a place kids can be comfortable talking to an adult. They can be comfortable knowing they have a meal. They should be safe.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be any of this, and it's not fair. And if you would like to donate towards the victims' families, there's a full list of fundraisers in the fundraiser link that we will include at the very top of our show notes. Our hearts are with you all. Courtney and I are deeply saddened by this event and by what this world is becoming.
Like I said, no words, but may they all rest in peace.
Yes.
I'm Edward October, host of October Pod, and you're listening to a special multi-part series by A Nefarious Nightmare called Minding the Beehive. Before we begin, we felt it our responsibility to issue a stern warning. This series serves as a deep dive exploration into the attacks committed by a serial rapist. This will include detailed first-hand accounts from the victims of this assailant. While this series is meant to raise awareness and inspire vigilance, we do understand that such content may trigger painful emotions for certain individuals. Listener discretion is therefore very strongly advised.
I think the point I want to get across in this whole thing is that not only am I embarrassed that I knew this guy was up to something bad when I first even started talking to him, but my heart and my head still told me that he needed an outlet, and I wanted to be a positive mental, I don't know, like a counselor or just someone just to make him see all the weird shit and the things he would say that are just they were very off. And the money that he stole from me is not even a big deal, in my opinion, anymore. The moment I started hearing all of these disgusting stories from these women that he's touched, I don't think I would have done anything if no one would have said anything about the shitty things he had done. And if I hadn't have found all the stuff that I had researched about him, he would still be out there doing this. And I'm putting my foot down because he did take advantage of me, and these stories I am hearing are bringing me to tears.
Last week, we gave our own example of a narcissist scenario, listened to a reenacted text, and then we heard Kitty's story.
This week, we will be giving a mini training on sexual abuse and sexual assault awareness, as well as listening to Tatum's story and the role she played. With that, I'm Amanda Cronin.
And I'm Courtney Fenner, and A Nefarious Nightmare presents Minding the Beehive, Surviving a Serial Rapist, Part 4.
What if we told you that Adrian Vildeswaya is not only a serial rapist, but also someone who would swindle money from his would-be victims? What if we told you that his attacks on women did not stop at sexual assault? What reaction would you have?
Adrian Vildeswaya, Adrian Gray, Audrey Steff, Adrian Steven, a narcissist of many names, and a monster of many games, as corny as that sounds. But all of that is typical of a narcissist. They are chameleon-like. They can change to whatever surrounding they encounter and whatever bidding they feel that they need to do.
And it's interesting we mentioned chameleon-like activity. During part 1 through 3, we discussed the actions of a narcissist heavily, and also how many serial rapists or serial killers have all the traits of one, which ties into this training we will be giving you today. Despite popular belief, the likelihood of a sexual offender having a particular look to them, such as a creepy or, lack of better term, quote unquote, like Chester the Molester look, and it's actually a very small likelihood.
In fact, it's proven that a rapist, serial rapist, sexual assailant, a pedophile, or if we must sway from the topic at hand, even a serial killer, may look just like you or me, a normal person. It's rather unfair to just base the judgment of character by the way someone looks, just in general, but just because someone has that look to them, you know the look, the man in the white van look, that doesn't mean that they are the man in the white van.
So it's important to remember and to be aware that you have very likely encountered a rapist, a pedophile, even a serial killer at some point in your life. It could be this sweet little old lady shopping at Ross. It could be the next door neighbor, a family member, your pastor, your teacher. It's also important to note that none of these things are gender exclusive either. While it's somewhat rare that a female would be any of those things of offenders as opposed to a male, it's still an existing possibility.
We hate bringing up Ted Bundy, but did he have the look? He did not. And yet, he was one of the biggest pieces of garbage in the entire universe, committing seriously monstrous acts of rape, torture, and murder. But he looked like your average Joe next door, and to many women, he was unbelievably attractive. Another example of someone who looked unassuming, not necessarily attractive, but is BTK, who was a family man. He was prominent in his church, and he even led Boy Scouts.
And we have all heard of the teacher who molests her students. As well, if you look up the sex offender registry or that one neighborhood website that tells you how far you live from a predator, when you see their pictures, you'll notice that most of them could blend into a crowd. So while it's scary to realize that, it's important not to judge someone based purely off how they look. There are traits to look for in a would-be offender though, and while some of those traits don't always equate to an offender, it's still worth paying attention to. The more the traits these people have, the more likely they are to be an offender.
First of all, pay attention to the way they talk about those who are perceived to be vulnerable. In the case of men, for example, do they talk about women as objects? Do they overemphasize a woman's looks in any way and objectify a part of the body? And let me be clear, I'm not talking about kinks or fetishes here. That's not at all what I'm talking about. I'm talking about somebody who does it to the point of creepy and it's unwelcome. And how about the way that they talk about children? Do they continuously dote on a child to the point of obsession? We aren't talking about showing pride when the children makes an A in school or, makes the football team, or even when a parent carries a picture of their child in their wallet, or even if a parent says that they love their children. All of that is fine and normal. But what I'm referring to is, do they continuously talk and talk and talk and talk about a child who is innocent and pure, or even more boldly, may make a sexual joke or innuendo at the expense of the child? And some of that may seem subjective, but if you ever engage in a conversation with someone and they continuously do any and even all of those things, and if alarm bells go off, you might want to respond to those alarm bells.
What about grooming? Again, this may seem subjective to some, but have you ever met the 40-something who willingly participates in buying alcohol and pornography for minors? What about the 20-something-year-old who has a party house and it's mainly minors in attendance? And that's not to say that minors going to a party is something to always freak out about. After all, sometimes teenagers do rebellious things. The scenario we are referring to is something like this. A youth pastor, for example, the one who wants to be the hip and cool. He decides to have a get-together at his home. The parents trust him and send their kids over there. It all seems unassuming and innocent at first, but the grooming often starts with the parents' use of coercive control and manipulation. Nothing happens the first time or two, but then the child and the groomer have this bond. The groomer may say something to the effect of, "Hey, I have a beer in my fridge. Grab me one. Maybe grab yourself one too. It'll be our little secret." It then may expand to a child accidentally being exposed when the groomer gets out of the shower and conveniently forgets to come out dressed.
Or maybe the groomer conveniently forgets that they have porn open on their laptop, and then the child walks in and sees it. The groomer catches the child. They end up watching it together, and it's another quote-unquote little secret that they have. The child doesn't know any better because this is an adult that they trust, because their parents trust the adult, and it's nobody's fault but the groomer in this situation. It's unfortunate, but they are really skilled at manipulation, with the end result very unfortunately often turning into molestation or rape via coercive control, which is something we've been talking a lot about. And with grooming, it can happen on the internet.
The internet is a very scary place nowadays. Even with strategies in place to prevent this from happening, a child may feel they trust a person they meet online, usually through some common interest such as a video game or something like that. The username of the groomer is usually something that is missing an actual name, something that has to do with an interest they share. For example, the username could be Roblox Nerd 7. A child may notice that and start chatting with the Roblox Nerd 7. They become friends as the user gains the child's trust, and then suddenly, some unsavory and offensive graphic material is shared by this person who gives the impression they too are a child, but in actuality, they're 28 years old.
So, how can we avoid any of this? Well, if your child is involved in an organization where an adult is present and leading, Make sure there's at least 2 or 3 adults to every 8 children, and make sure the child does not go off somewhere by themselves with an adult. Sounds easier said than done, but this is why there should be a ratio of 2 to 3 adults to 8 children. It's to ensure that someone is around that can witness and stop something bad from happening. Also, make sure you vet any adult your child comes into contact with that may be around for a while. Google can be your best friend in this case. Make sure you listen to every word your child has to say. If something is off, ask questions. Never blame a child in the event that they even hint that something is happening. The last thing you want is for the child to not trust you to tell you. In fact, if a child ever tells you that they are being sexually assaulted or molested, always believe them. The likelihood that they're even telling you a lie is extremely slim. In fact, it's so slim that it's damn near non-existent. It's better to believe them and remove them from the situation than to not believe them and they continuously endure what's happening.
So, what does any of this have to do with Adrian? He has used coercive control and manipulation to access his victims, heavily filtered his own images, and doesn't have a particular look to him. In fact, when you look at his profiles, you would never guess that he was this monster. Another thing that he has victimized minors as well. And talking about a chameleon, he has not only raped his victims, he has also swindled money from them. The way he coerced his victims for sexual assault is also the same way he coerced his victims into giving him money. Today we're going to listen to Tatum's story.
Before we show you Tatum's side, I do want to let you all know that it's fortunate that she wasn't a victim of his in the way of sexual assault, but she was one of his victims via coercive control and manipulation. It's unfortunate in the way that it could have escalated to that point, but thankfully it doesn't. Her story does play a key role in this series, and as you hear her recount the text that he sent her, you'll see that it's similar to the graphic nature of what he has said to other victims, and it's important to hear this side as all of these stories do tie in together. With that, here is Tatum's account.
My name is Tatum Connolly. I am currently 28 years old. This was only like maybe the beginning of the year, so I was still the same age. So in the beginning, just pre-meeting him, I had been seeing him in my People You May Know on Facebook, and he was always under a different name. And for a while, it had been Adrian Esteban. And when he had added me, it was Adri Steph at the time. And I didn't tell him that I had seen the other spelling of his name or whatnot. Like, I wasn't quite sure what was going on with that. His profile was definitely suspicious. Something to kind of look over and be like, is this person real? But yeah, he had added me, and then I said something about his outfit. You know, he might be weird looking guy, but he had some killer outfits in there. And I said something, and that led to us talking a little more, and then he added me on Snapchat, and that's usually where we talked. He told me that he didn't have one when I asked him, because in the beginning I was like, I'm usually not on Facebook a lot, or Instagram per se. I'm usually on Snapchat posting all like my personal stuff because I only have a small audience on there. So yeah, he added me on Snapchat. He told me that he hadn't had it for a while. So when he added me on there, he would not send me pictures of his face. It was really odd. So within the first 10 minutes of adding him, I almost deleted him because he refused to send pictures of himself, because that's like I only have people I know on here. He sent me a picture of his hands. Yeah, he has. Yeah, in order to prove that it was him, he sent me a picture of his hands because they're both tattooed, and it would prove that was him. So weird. I thought that was so weird, but you know what? You know, just trying to be nice to a new friend that I had. Of course. Absolutely not. I did not know anything about this guy. He kind of, yeah, you'll learn more. Like, he definitely like let the cat out of the bag almost himself. Dumbass. And I had never I'm not really into true crime, I've never really been the person to kind of sit down and watch this stuff. And now I am, just because this is kind of spiraled into what it is, but it never made me feel good. But yeah, I'm just always like, if you need help and I have money, here it is. And this is where it got me. Unfortunately, yeah, I don't care if I'm labeled a bitch anymore. So this is a funny little story. Intentionally, no, I'm in a very committed relationship with my boyfriend. I stated many times that I'm like, I just think you're cool. You're a good looking guy to me. But I'm not looking for anything. I already have everything I need. But I would love to be friends. And that's kind of where I left it, but he didn't leave it like that. Well, that's where my funny story comes in, because 3 days in, like Holly's story and I is kind of similar in that aspect. Like within 3 days, he was just like, oh my gosh, you and I would look so hot together. You need to move up with me. Like, you need to move up to Tucson with me now. Basically, like, be my girlfriend. Like, leave your boyfriend and leave now. And I'm like, what are you smoking? Oh yeah. So finally, I just said yes one day. I was like, yep, I'm your girlfriend now. And got home and told my boyfriend, I was like, looked at my fake boyfriend, and he's like, what in the shit? And I was like, it's for Nancy Drew stuff only. But yeah, I definitely got him to confide in me and tell me a lot of stuff about his view and what happened with Holly. And it's very one-sided, and it makes him look very like blameless, to say the least. I think I still feel kind of the same, only in more of a pity, I hate you. Like, I felt bad for you in the beginning, and then I started to feel worse for you, and I tried to get you mental help and tried to make you, I don't know, less weird in a sense. I don't know. I'm weird like that. But no, now I feel sorry for you, and I really hope you rot in prison after all this shit that I've heard you done. Like, and not only that, but he was just very, it was almost like belittling. Like, he would ask your opinion about something, especially music-wise, and then the moment you said anything, he would just be like, oh no, that's not the right answer. Like, okay. Yeah, he tells me that to take my medication. Since I have like called him out since all this happened, he's always just like, take your medication and heal. Yeah. Yeah, I am a hairdresser in Lincoln, Nebraska. I do give a lot of benefit of the doubt just because I have mental illness. I've been going through it, and there's been a lot of stuff in my life that's kind of led me to where my belief system is now. And yeah, it's not out of my character, like, for anybody that it's in my personal circle. Like, if there's anything that's going on with them, like vet bills, buying groceries every day, like, if I have money to give, and if you're not asking for a lot, like, I'm going to give it to you just because I feel better spending it on you than I do myself. But at the same time, yeah, I do get a lot of people taking advantage of that. I knew from the start it was kind of that way. And then it just spiraled into him asking every other day. And, $300 doesn't seem like a lot, but, over the course of like 2 months of me just like giving him just useless money that he didn't need, I'm angry. The beast told me that his parents pay for his rent and his groceries and everything. Yeah. And I know everybody else was sending him money too. So I can't imagine how much money he's just accumulated just by being a dumbass. One of the first conversations that we had, I was just assuming that he was just having a really bad day. But it was literally like, I think it was the day I met him, but he was like, oh, I just wish I had money for a bottle of wine and some Smokies. And I fucking gave him money. Yeah, because I was just like, man, this guy seems like he's having a rough night and I have plenty of money. I'll send him $20. No big deal. And that's where it started. The asking started to get more frequent. And every time he would say, like, this is the last time I'm asking. And, you know, sometimes I would just give him money just for the sheer fact that I wanted him to say more or say more about what was going on. Because I think he takes advantage of people with this profession because we can be off our phone the entire day and he can be doing whatever the hell he wants because we're working and we don't have a time to check our phones. So when I get off, and try to text him at the end of the day, he replies within like minutes because he hasn't heard from me all day. Yeah, it's the fact. And, you know, I got to give it to him for talking to this many women at once. Like, he definitely keeps up on conversations, but he does catch himself in the little lies he tells everybody. Because the reason why he stopped talking to me in the end is because he wasn't quite sure who he told where he worked. Like, because he had gotten his new job and then he had told me where he got his job at, and he wasn't quite sure because he didn't tell somebody else where he worked on purpose. Well, and then one day I was like, well, how was work? You know, how's doing this at this place? And he was like, how do you know I worked there? And I'm like, dude, you told me to call there and say you made an awesome steak, and I'm not calling there and it's Applebee's. I'm like, I'm not calling there and saying you made an awesome steak, my man. No. He called one night, and keep in mind, my boyfriend was in the room and heard the entire conversation. Like, I had him like with his mouth closed, like hands over his mouth, so he wouldn't freaking laugh because this dude is so freaking, I don't know. Just hearing him talk, it's just like him smelling his own fart the whole time. Yeah, and that's why my boyfriend had to hold his mouth shut the whole time because he's just goofy. But he was like pretty tipsy, and he was like, this was the day that Holly had called Applebee's to tell the manager there that he was dangerous. And he had called me that night to complain about her calling. And then he told me to call Applebee's and tell them that I just had the best steak of my life. And AV made it, you know, just, yeah, we don't call him by his name anymore. Oh, yeah. It's kind of like the F word in the group. I wasn't expecting it. And to top that all off, there was like, I'd wake up to like 3 paragraphs of just disgusting, like sexual things that he would send me. Like, oh, when you move here, like, oh, I don't even want to repeat it just because I'm just like so like embarrassed that he even sent that to me. But yeah, he would basically talk. Like he would talk about like coming inside of me a lot. Yeah, it was like, and believe me, it was like paragraph upon paragraph. Like he had typed all this out, and I know he had sent paragraphs of the same, like copy paste to like multiple other people besides me. And I know he had sent me like this long Valentine's Day message on Snapchat. It was really cringy, and he's just like, and one day I'll if you want, I'll let you marry me. Like, I have that saved too. I have that conversation saved. He literally said, I would let you marry me. I'm like, oh boy. When I had met him, it was Adri Steph. I believe Holly went over the spelling and her recordings. And then it was Adrian Esteban. And then right now it's I've seen Adrian Steven. I've heard that he goes by his actual like his son's name, as it's so weird because they're both about the same like amount of letters and they both start with A, and he'll use his son's name. Yeah. And this is what the other girls have told me. Yeah, gross. And not only that, but he's on like dating websites that, like, honestly, some of us has never even heard of. And the fact that, like, whenever he talks about having a baby with anybody, he wants a girl so bad. I've heard from some of the women in there that, like, he's very aggressive and weird about it. And I don't mean to tell anybody else's story, but he's done awful things to when some people have figured out they're pregnant with boys. The things I've heard, like, that's why I felt like I needed to come on, because I need people to know that, like, this guy's dangerous and this could have happened to me and my best friend who was going to come with me to go take a trip out there. Keep in mind, he wanted me to move in with him the moment he started talking to me. In my head, he was just some broke dude that was in a band once. And, you know, he told me, I'm pretty sure that you already know, like, he said he was in Bless the Fall. And I did my research and I was like, this dude is not dated anywhere. So my boyfriend and I were talking about that when I first met him. And he was like, well, this has happened. The other bands were like, they've done shit so bad that, like, they've just been cut out of the entire history of the band because it's just bad press. So I was honestly wondering what the hell he did. And it just happened to lead me to Holly. Like, they've easily become my best friends. I did, I tried to be a mental advocate for him too. I want to make that clear. Like, when I was talking to him, I had found what posted and Holly's posts and everything on Twitter. So when and keep in mind, he would never tell me his last name. Even when I asked for it, he would change the subject. So when I finally found it, he acted like, what's that? And I'm like, it's your last name, isn't it? And then I said, I mentioned Holly's name, and he's like, don't mention that name. I never met him in person, but keep in mind, I didn't quite know exactly who this person was. And my friend and I were planning on going to Meow Wolf out in Albuquerque. And we were going to, I was like, maybe we can circle around to, like, Tucson and then head back on a road trip and then just, like, have a drink or something or go have dinner. I was bringing my friend with me. And man, like, when I was doing that interview and he's like, what exactly did this man do to you? And I'm like, he put me in potential danger. And not only that, but, like, he put my best friend in potential danger too. My family personally doesn't know about any of this. This has honestly just kind of been bittersweet in a sense. I've noticed that I've never really been in the position in my life where someone has taken power away from me, just like how Holly describes what he did to her. And that fucking scared me. And I think this has just taught me, since then, like, I've kind of let go of another person that just kind of, like, leeches me for money. It's taught me quite a bit, and it's also opened my eyes to how ugly the world can be. And I have to realize that I was born and raised in Nebraska, and it's pretty, green, like, safe zone out here, sorta. I don't know. Like, there's certain things I've done around here. My friends are like, if you did that in California, you'd be shot. Like, walking in front of speeding cars, telling them to slow down, like, stuff like that. I really need to pay attention to the people around me and realize that there's actual danger out there and I am not impervious to it. And yeah, I think the solid number is at least a decade. I've heard 41 and I've heard 60. I guarantee there's more than that though, because I swear every time I post something about him, there's a random girl messaging me saying, like, oh, he used to message me years ago, or like, and they don't even come out. And keep in mind, like, the other girls are post stuff like that too, and the same thing happens to them, but these girls will never, like, come out and tell their story because it was only just, like, a few sentences that were cast in between. Right? Oh yeah, like, this would not have, I think it's been circling around at least, I think I'll have to check account again to see, but I know it's over 1,000 shares. Yeah, I don't think it would be floating around like wildfire if it was just a couple people who just wanted, he basically says, he's like, they just want clout because I won't date him anymore and they're jealous. After he had cut off all communication with me, I had plans from the get-go to find this woman that he had went and like told me about and tell her all what he told me and get the real story. And I found Holly and I messaged her and I was like, hey, your ex fucked me over. Can we be friends? And then she added me into the group. Yeah, like there was no like, oh, well, I can't let you in here. No, she was just like, you want to be added? And then it just came in and shared my story. I think that's where he gets his hooks in mostly, but I think he'll catch what's ever biting. Yeah, he has a type, but like when they don't want to fuck with him anymore, I think he just kind of goes for whatever. He's like, oh, you're kind of pretty. Oh, I like you. Just whatever. You seem gullible. Stop sending people money over instant links. I don't know. That just gets addicting. And if you haven't met that person online and you haven't known them more than 2 years, or at least a year, I don't know. If you haven't known them for some significant time, do not send them money. And that's just one thing I'm learning. I'm gonna go take some self-defense classes, possibly look into conceal and carry, but I'm not sure on that. But yeah, just something to protect myself. Oh no. I want people to know, like, he is a shape-shifting snake, and there's a reason why he never posts updated pictures of himself. It's because they're so rendered and taken by other people in the past, and he doesn't have those connections anymore. And there's a reason why. And he's a predator. He'll slither his way into your life and try to make it worth something, and then make you seem like you're an awful person for standing your ground and having boundaries. I just want the police to like actually take a look into these matters and like actually bring these people in for psych evals, because I swear the moment you meet this man, he's a danger. And I think anybody could even sense that. Oh, that whole trip, I thought I would be more anxious leaving and getting there and staying, but it really wasn't, just because I felt so safe around those ladies, and they were awesome to be with. And it just felt like we had been friends for so long, just because I felt like we all had the same mindset, and that's really special. Right. And like, I've just felt so much like at ease since I got back from that trip. Oh, my heart breaks for all the people that have just been like literally abused by this guy. Yeah, like it's not just verbal abuse, it's physical abuse, and it's terrifying. Like, he's beat people to the brink of death. Yeah, and these are the people that he's claimed he's loved. No. And I just, I fear for everybody in that vicinity of him. Yeah, but at least he's not like anywhere near his parents, which are his like support system, if he's across the states. I know that he's actually got the shit kicked out of him by someone's brother in Oregon. Oh, I can't give exact dates, but I think it was like last year. He had a huge black guy and it's in a TikTok post where one of the girls, I think it was Grace. I think Grace posted it and was like, where'd he get this black eye from? It was because somebody's brother kicked the shit out of him. Okay, give me back the $300 I gave you then. We didn't just show up out of nowhere. I thought about pressing charges, but I just knew they were just going to look at me like, it's $300, just walk away. And that's what I did. My roommate has kind of led to me believe that he might have ties with Tooth Taker in that area, but I don't.
Next week, we will listen to part 5 of this series, which is Haley's story, as well as another reenacted text that ties into Haley. This series will continue into 8 parts. Part 6, we'll listen to the full 40-minute phone call and then discuss the legal side with Elise from True Crime Cat Lawyer. Part 7, we'll talk with Mama D from Petals of Support, just to offer some general support and love to all victims of sexual assault. In Part 8, we will be closing out with another victim account who prefers to remain anonymous.
This completes Part 4 of this multi-part series. We thank everyone for their participation in this, whether they are interviewed, reenacting, or even just listening. Please be vigilant.
Thank you for listening to A Nefarious Nightmare Podcast. Music used in this podcast was originally composed by Ghost Stories Incorporated and remixed by Ryan RCX Murphy. Please leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or on any podcast platform that accepts ratings and reviews. Thank you very much for listening, and as always, don't be a dick and wear deodorant.